The woman stood frozen like a statue in the middle of Valentine, Nebraska's dusty Main Street, her eyes wide and unseeing as a freight wagon barreled toward her, and Yates Parker knew he had maybe 3 seconds to save her life. He spurred his horse forward, leaning low in the saddle as his mount surged across the street. The wagon driver was already hauling on the reins, shouting warnings, but the heavy vehicle wouldn't stop in time. Yates reached down, grabbed the woman around her waist, and pulled her up against his chest just as the wagon wheels carved through the space where she had been standing. His horse danced sideways, adjusting to the sudden weight distribution, and Yates held the woman secure against him as his heartbeat thundered in his ears. The wagon driver was still cursing, other people were shouting, but the woman in his arms made no sound at all. She was rigid as a fence post, her body locked in terror, her breath coming in shallow gasps that barely moved her chest. "You are safe now," Yates said quietly, keeping his voice low and steady. "I have got you." She did not respond. Her eyes stared straight ahead at nothing, her hands clenched into white-knuckled fists at her sides. She wore a traveling dress that had seen better days, dusty and rumpled like she had been on the trail for weeks. Her dark auburn hair had come loose from its pins and hung in tangled waves around her pale face. Yates dismounted carefully, bringing her down with him. The moment her feet touched the ground, her knees buckled, but he kept his arm around her waist, supporting her weight. A small crowd had gathered, drawn by the commotion. "Is she hurt?" asked Mrs. Henley, who ran the boarding house. "I do not think so," Yates replied. "Just frightened." "Frightened? She nearly got herself killed standing there like that," the wagon driver said, still agitated. "What was she thinking?" Yates ignored him, focusing on the woman. Her eyes had not changed, still fixed on something none of them could see. He had seen this before during the war, men who had witnessed too much horror and simply stopped being present in the world. The doctors called it shell shock or nervous exhaustion. This woman had the same look. "Come on," he said gently. "Let us get you somewhere you can sit down." He guided her toward the boarding house, and to his relief, her feet moved automatically, one step after another, though her face remained blank. Mrs. Henley hurried ahead to open the door, and soon they were in the front parlor. Yates eased the woman into a cushioned chair, and she sat exactly where he placed her, her hands still clenched, her breathing still shallow. "I will fetch some water," Mrs. Henley said, disappearing toward the kitchen. Yates knelt in front of the chair, putting himself at eye level with the woman. Up close, he could see she was young, maybe 22 or 23. Despite the dirt and exhaustion marking her features, she had a delicate beauty to her face, with high cheekbones and a soft mouth. But it was her eyes that held his attention, wide and hazel and completely empty of any awareness. "My name is Yates Parker," he said softly. "You are in Valentine, Nebraska. You are safe here. Can you tell me your name?" "Nothing. Not even a flicker of recognition, Mrs." Henley returned with a glass of water and a damp cloth. "Poor dear. Where did she come from?" "I do not know," Yates admitted. He took the glass and held it up to the woman's lips. "Can you drink some water?" At first, nothing happened, but then some instinct seemed to kick in and her lips parted slightly. He tilted the glass carefully, letting a small amount of water trickle into her mouth. She swallowed automatically, and he gave her a bit more. "That is good," he encouraged. "A little more." She drank about half the glass before her mouth closed and would not open again. Yates set the water aside and took the damp cloth from Mrs. Henley, gently wiping some of the dust from the woman's face. She did not react to his touch, did not pull away or lean into it. She simply sat there, frozen in whatever private hell held her captive. "Should we fetch Doc Morrison?" Mrs. Henley asked. "Perhaps," Yates said, But I do not know what he can do. This is not the kind of hurt that shows on the outside. He had no idea why he felt so compelled to help this stranger. Valentine was a small town, population barely 300, and Yates was just a cowboy passing through on his way to a job at a ranch 20 miles west. He had stopped to resupply and maybe spend one night in a real bed before heading out. Getting involved with a traumatized woman with no name and no explanation for her condition was not part of his plan, but something about the emptiness in her eyes called to him. Maybe it was because he understood what it meant to be lost. Maybe it was because he had once been saved by someone's kindness when he needed it most. Or maybe it was simply that he could not walk away from someone so clearly broken. "I will pay for a room for her," Yates heard himself say. "Just for tonight, until we figure out who she is and where she belongs." Mrs. Henley looked surprised but pleased. "That is very kind of you, Mr. Parker. Let me get room 4 ready. It has a nice view of the street." While Mrs. Henley bustled off, Yates stayed kneeling in front of the woman. He studied her hands, still clenched tight, and gently took one in his own. Her fingers were cold despite the warm June afternoon, and her skin was rough with calluses that spoke of hard work. This was not some delicate lady who had lived a life of leisure. She had known labor, known struggle. "I do not know what happened to you," he said quietly, "but I promise you are safe now. Nobody is going to hurt you here." Her hand remained rigid in his, but he thought maybe her breathing had slowed just a fraction. It was not much, but it was something. Doc Morrison arrived shortly after, a portly man in his 50s with kind eyes and gentle hands. He examined the woman carefully, checking her pulse, looking into her eyes, testing her reflexes. She submitted to it all without resistance or reaction. "Physically, she seems unharmed," the doctor concluded. "No injuries I can see, though she is malnourished and dehydrated, but mentally." He shook his head. "I have seen this before, usually in people who have survived something terrible. A shock to the system so severe that the mind simply retreats. Sometimes they come back from it. Sometimes they do not." "What can we do for her?" Yates asked. "Keep her safe, keep her comfortable, make sure she eats and drinks. Talk to her, even if she does not respond. Let her know she is not alone. Beyond that." He shrugged helplessly. "We wait and hope that whatever is holding her prisoner eventually lets her go." After Doc Morrison left, Mrs. Henley showed Yates up to room 4. It was small but clean, with a narrow bed, a washstand, and a window overlooking the street. Together, they guided the woman upstairs. She moved when directed but showed no awareness of where she was going. "Will she be all right alone?" Mrs. Henley asked, worry creasing her forehead. Yates looked at the woman, now sitting on the edge of the bed exactly as they had positioned her. "I do not know, but someone should probably stay with her, at least for tonight." "I have other guests to tend to," Mrs. Henley said apologetically, "and propriety." "I know." Yates ran a hand through his dark hair. "Maybe you could send for someone. Another woman who might be willing to sit with her." "I will ask around," Mrs. Henley promised. But when she returned an hour later, it was with disappointing news. "Most of the women in town are already occupied with their own families. Martha Sullivan said she could come by tomorrow morning, but tonight." "I will stay," Yates said. Mrs. Henley looked scandalized. "Mr. Parker, you cannot stay in a room alone with an unmarried woman. The talk it would cause." "The door will stay open," Yates said firmly. "And I will sit in that chair by the window, not on the bed. This woman needs help, and I am not going to let concern about gossip stop me from making sure she is safe." Mrs. Henley opened her mouth as if to argue, then closed it again. Finally, she nodded. "You are a good man, Mr. Parker. I will bring up some supper for both of you." She left, and Yates settled into the wooden chair by the window. The woman had not moved from her position on the bed. As the afternoon light faded toward evening, he watched her, looking for any sign of change. There was none. Mrs. Henley brought up a tray with bread, stew, and coffee. Yates tried to coax the woman to eat, holding a spoonful of stew to her lips. After several attempts, she swallowed a small amount. It was a slow, painstaking process, but he managed to get perhaps a third of the bowl into her before she would take no more. As darkness fell outside, Yates lit the lamp on the washstand, keeping the flame low. The woman's eyes followed the light for just a second, the first purposeful movement he had seen from her. His heart leaped at that tiny sign of awareness. "Can you see the light?" he asked gently. "It is nice, is it not, warm and bright?" No response, but her eyes had lost that vacant stare, at least for the moment. They were focused on the lamp flame, watching it flicker and dance. Yates pulled his chair closer to the bed. "My mother used to say that fire was alive," he said, keeping his voice soft and conversational. "She said it breathed and ate and grew, just like we do. I suppose in a way she was right. Fire does need air and fuel to survive." He did not know if she could hear him, but he kept talking anyway. He told her about growing up on a small farm in Missouri, about his mother's cooking and his father's terrible singing voice. He told her about learning to ride when he was 5 years old and falling off more times than he could count. "My older brother used to tease me about it," Yates said, smiling at the memory. "He said I bounced like a rubber ball, but I kept getting back on. My father always said that was the only way to live, to keep getting back up no matter how many times you fell." The woman's eyes had drifted away from the lamp and were now staring at the wall. Yates fell silent, wondering if he was doing any good at all. The doctor had said to talk to her, but what if she was trapped somewhere too deep to hear? "You should sleep," he said eventually. "Let me help you lie down." He approached carefully, telegraphing his movements so as not to startle her. Gently, he guided her shoulders down until she was lying on her side on top of the covers. She did not resist, but she did not relax either. Her body remained rigid, her hands still clenched. Yates fetched a blanket from the chest at the foot of the bed and draped it over her. "There. That is better." He returned to his chair and settled in for a long night. Through the open door, he could hear the sounds of the boarding house settling for the evening. Footsteps on the stairs, doors closing, muffled conversations. Outside, Valentine was quiet except for the occasional bark of a dog or the distant sound of piano music from the saloon 2 streets over. Yates dozed fitfully in the chair, waking every hour or so to check on the woman. She never moved from the position he had placed her in. As the night wore on, he found himself studying her face in the lamplight, wondering about her story. Where had she come from? What had happened to her? Did she have family somewhere, people who were searching for her? The more he looked at her, the more he felt that strange pull in his chest, that sense of connection he could not explain. She was beautiful, yes, but it was more than that. There was something about her that called to something in him, a recognition that went deeper than logic or reason. When dawn broke through the window, painting the room in shades of gold and pink, Yates stood and stretched, working the kinks out of his neck and back. The woman's eyes were open, staring at the ceiling now. He wondered if she had slept at all. "Good morning," he said. "Did you rest?" Silence, as expected. He moved to the washstand and poured fresh water into the basin, dampening a cloth. "Let me help you freshen up." He sat on the edge of the bed and gently washed her face and hands. Her skin was soft under the cloth despite the calluses and roughness. As he worked, he found himself talking again, telling her about the sunrise, about the day ahead, about nothing and everything. "I was supposed to leave town this morning," he said as he dried her hands. "There is a job waiting for me at the Circle Bar Ranch." They need extra hands for the summer drive, but I cannot leave you like this. Not yet. Mrs. Henley arrived with breakfast, her eyebrows rising at finding Yates still in the room but saying nothing about it. "How is she?" "The same," Yates admitted, "but I got her to eat a little last night." "That is something." Mrs. Henley set down the tray. "Martha Sullivan will be here within the hour to sit with her." "Good. I need to send a telegram to the ranch, let them know I will be delayed." After coaxing the woman to eat a few bites of eggs and bread, Yates headed to the telegraph office. He sent his message to the Circle Bar, explaining that he had been detained and would arrive as soon as possible. The reply came back within an hour. The job would wait for him, but they needed him there within the week. A week. That gave him 7 days to figure out what to do about the mysterious woman with no name. When he returned to the boarding house, he found Martha Sullivan in the room, a sturdy woman in her 40s with a no-nonsense manner. She was attempting to brush the tangles out of the woman's hair with limited success. "Poor thing," Martha said when Yates entered. "She is as stiff as a board. I got her to use the chamber pot, but that was about it. No words, no sounds at all." "Thank you for coming," Yates said. "It is no trouble. I will stay until this evening. Mrs. Henley said you paid for the room for 3 nights. "I did." Yates moved to where he could see the woman's face. "I am going to ask around town, see if anyone knows anything about her or saw her arrive." He spent the rest of the morning talking to people in Valentine. The station master said no one matching her description had arrived on the train in the past week. The owner of the general store had not seen her. The saloon keeper, the blacksmith, the livery owner, all gave him the same answer. They had never seen her before yesterday when she appeared in the middle of the street. "It is like she just materialized out of thin air," Yates muttered to himself as he walked back to the boarding house. But people did not just appear. She had to have come from somewhere. Her clothes and condition suggested she had been traveling, probably on foot given the state of her boots. But from where? And why, over the next 3 days, Yates fell into a routine. He spent the days asking questions, checking with neighboring ranches and farms, sending telegrams to sheriffs in surrounding towns. He was looking for any reports of missing women, any clues to her identity. Every evening he returned to the boarding house and spelled Martha Sullivan, sitting with the woman through the night. He talked to her constantly during those long, dark hours. He told her about his life, his dreams, his regrets. He told her about the war, about the friends he had lost, about the scars he carried that no one could see. He told her things he had never told anyone, secrets that poured out of him in the quiet intimacy of that small room. "Sometimes I feel like I am just drifting," he admitted on the 3rd night. "Going from job to job, town to town, never putting down roots anywhere. My brother settled down, got married, had children. He is happy, but me, I cannot seem to find a place where I belong." The woman gave no indication she heard him, but he kept talking anyway. There was something cathartic about speaking these truths out loud, even to someone who could not respond. On the 4th day, Yates finally got a lead. A farmer 10 miles north mentioned that his neighbor had found signs of a camp in the woods on his property a few days back. It looked like several people had been there, and they had left in a hurry. Yates rode out to investigate. The campsite was easy to find, a small clearing near a creek. There had definitely been people here, maybe 4 or 5 based on the disturbance of the ground. He found the remains of a fire, some empty cans, and a torn piece of fabric caught on a branch. The fabric matched the woman's dress, but what caught his attention most was the blood. Not much, just a few drops on a rock near the fire pit, but enough to tell him that something bad had happened here. He searched the area carefully, looking for more clues. He found tracks leading away from the camp, heading south toward Valentine. One set of tracks was smaller than the others, probably a woman's boots. She had been running. The other tracks, heavier and deeper, showed pursuit. Someone had been chasing her. Yates felt cold dread settle in his stomach. Whatever had happened to the woman, whatever had frozen her in terror, had occurred at this camp. He needed to know more, but the trail was already days old and would be difficult to follow. He returned to Valentine as the sun was setting and went straight to Sheriff Tom Curtis. He showed the sheriff the piece of fabric and described what he had found. "Sounds like trouble," Curtis said, a lean man with a weathered face. "But without knowing who she is or who might have hurt her, there is not much I can do. No crime has been reported." "She is the evidence of a crime," Yates argued. "Look at her. Something terrible happened to that woman." "I do not doubt it," Curtis said. "But unless she can tell us what, or unless someone files a complaint, my hands are tied. Best thing you can do is keep taking care of her and hope she comes around." Frustrated but out of options, Yates returned to the boarding house. Martha greeted him at the door with news that made his heart skip. "She spoke," Martha said, her eyes wide with excitement. "What? When?" "About an hour ago, just one word. She said no. I was trying to give her some soup and she turned her head away and said it clear as day. No." Yates took the stairs 2 at a time. The woman was in her usual position, sitting in the chair by the window, but when he entered the room, her eyes tracked to him. Actually focused on him and tracked his movement. It was the first time she had truly looked at him since he pulled her from the street. "Hello," he said softly, moving slowly so as not to frighten her. "Martha said you spoke. That is wonderful." Her lips parted, and for a moment he thought she might speak again, but no sound came out. Still, the awareness in her eyes was unmistakable. She was there, truly present, even if she could not yet find the words. Yates knelt in front of her chair the way he had that first day. "My name is Yates Parker. You are in Valentine, Nebraska. You are safe here. Can you tell me your name?" She stared at him, and he could see the struggle happening behind her eyes. She wanted to speak, he could tell, but something was blocking her. Fear, maybe, or trauma so deep it had stolen her voice. "It is all right," he said gently. "You do not have to tell me now. But I need you to know that you are safe. Whatever happened to you before, it cannot hurt you here. I will not let it." Her eyes filled with tears, the first real emotion he had seen from her. One tear spilled over and traced down her cheek. Yates reached up carefully and wiped it away with his thumb. "You are going to be all right," he promised. "I know it does not feel like it now, but you will be." That night after Martha left, Yates sat in his usual chair and watched the woman. She had returned to staring at nothing, but the blankness was not as complete as before. There was something flickering behind her eyes now, thoughts or memories fighting their way to the surface. "I found the camp today," he told her. "Where you were before you came to town. I saw the blood. I know someone hurt you or tried to, but you got away. You were strong enough to escape and find your way here. That takes courage." Her hands clenched tighter and her breathing quickened. She was listening. She heard him and was reacting. "I do not need you to tell me what happened," Yates continued. "Not until you are ready, but I want you to know that I am here and I am not going anywhere, not until I know you are truly safe." He had already sent another telegram to the Circle Bar Ranch, asking for more time. They had replied with barely concealed annoyance but agreed to hold the position for another week. That gave him 11 days total from when he first found her. It would have to be enough. The next morning brought another breakthrough. When Yates entered the room with breakfast, the woman was standing at the window, looking out at the street below. She turned when she heard him and their eyes met. "Good morning," he said, trying to keep the excitement out of his voice. "You are up. That is good." She watched him set the tray on the small table, her gaze following his every movement. He could practically feel her studying him, trying to figure him out. "Are you hungry?" he asked. She hesitated, then nodded. Just a small dip of her chin, but it was a response. Communication. They sat at the table together, and for the first time she fed herself, picking up the spoon with trembling hands and slowly eating the oatmeal. Yates ate his own breakfast, giving her space but staying close enough to help if needed. When they were done, she looked at him and opened her mouth. He waited, holding his breath. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice so soft he almost missed it. "You are welcome," he replied, his heart soaring. She did not say anything else, but she did not retreat into that frozen state either. She stayed present, aware, watching him with those expressive hazel eyes. "Would you like to go outside?" Yates asked. "Get some fresh air. We do not have to go far, just to the porch maybe." She considered this for a long moment, then nodded. He offered his arm, and after a brief hesitation, she took it. Her grip was light, her hand trembling on his sleeve, but she walked beside him down the stairs and out onto the boarding house's wide front porch. The morning sun was warm, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of prairie grass and wildflowers. They sat on the bench together, and Yates watched as she tilted her face up to the sun, closing her eyes. Some of the tension seemed to leave her shoulders. "It feels good, does it not?" he said. "Being outside." "Yes," she whispered. They sat in companionable silence for a while. Other people passed by on the street, going about their morning business. A few cast curious glances their way, but most minded their own affairs. Valentine was a small town, but it had enough going on that one mysterious woman was not the scandal of the century. "Do you remember your name?" Yates asked gently. She was quiet for so long he thought she would not answer. Then, barely audible, "Rose." "Rose," he repeated, testing the name. "That is beautiful. Do you remember your family name?" Another long pause. "Oliver. Rose Oliver." "Rose Oliver," Yates said. "It is nice to finally know what to call you. I am Yates Parker, but I suppose I already told you that." The corners of her mouth twitched, not quite a smile, but close. It transformed her face, hinting at the woman she must have been before whatever happened to break her. "Rose, I found the camp where you were," Yates said carefully. "I know something bad happened there. You do not have to tell me about it now, or ever if you do not want to. But if you can tell me who hurt you, I can make sure they are caught." Her hand flew to her throat and all the color drained from her face. She started shaking, her breath coming in quick gasps. "I am sorry," Yates said quickly. "I should not have pushed. You are safe, remember. No one can hurt you here." But she was spiraling, her eyes going unfocused again, that frozen terror creeping back in. Without thinking, Yates pulled her against his chest, wrapping his arms around her. She was stiff at first, but then she seemed to crumple, her forehead resting against his shoulder as she shook. "You are safe," he murmured over and over. "I have got you. You are safe." Slowly, gradually, the shaking subsided. She did not pull away from him, though, and he did not push her to. They sat there on the porch, her in his arms, as the morning stretched toward noon. It felt natural, holding her like this. It felt right. When she finally drew back, her eyes were red but clear. "I am sorry," she whispered. "Do not be. You have nothing to apologize for." She looked down at her hands. "There were 4 men. They took me from the wagon train I was traveling with. I was going to California to live with my aunt. My parents died last winter, and I had nowhere else to go." Yates listened, his jaw tightening with anger at what she must have endured. "They kept me for 3 days," Rose continued, her voice flat and distant. "They said they were going to sell me. There are men who buy women, they said, take them south to work in places." She shuddered. "I could not let that happen, so I ran. It was dark and they were drinking. I just ran and kept running until I could not run anymore. And then I was in town, but I could not make myself move or speak or do anything. I just froze. You were incredibly brave, Yates said. You saved yourself. I do not feel brave, I feel broken. You are not broken. You are hurt, yes, but not broken, and hurt things can heal. She looked at him then, really looked at him, and something passed between them. Understanding, recognition, connection. He saw it in her eyes, felt it in his chest. Why are you helping me? She asked. You do not know me. I do not know, he admitted. Maybe because someone helped me once when I needed it, or maybe because the moment I saw you standing in that street, something in me knew I could not walk away. You have been staying with me at night, have you not? Martha told me. I did not want you to be alone. People will talk. Let them talk. Your safety matters more than gossip. She studied his face and he let her, hoping she could see his sincerity. Finally, she said, You are a good man, Yates Parker. I try to be. They went back inside when the midday heat became too much. Rose was tired from the emotional conversation and lay down to rest. Yates sat in his chair, watching her sleep, and realized with startling clarity that he was falling for her. Maybe he already had fallen. It was too fast, too impossible, but there it was. This woman who barely knew him, who was just beginning to heal from trauma, had somehow claimed his heart. Over the next few days, Rose continued to improve. She spoke more, though she was still quiet. She started doing small things for herself, brushing her own hair, dressing without help. She even ventured downstairs for meals, though she stayed close to Yates, as if he were her anchor to the world. Yates knew his time was running out. The Circle Bar Ranch had sent a final telegram. Come now, or the job goes to someone else. He had to leave, but the thought of abandoning Rose felt like tearing out a piece of his soul. On his last evening in Valentine, he took Rose for a walk. The sun was setting, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and purple. They walked to the edge of town, where the buildings gave way to open prairie. I have to leave tomorrow, Yates said, hating the words even as he spoke them. Rose stopped walking. I know, you have a job waiting. I do not want to go, but I need the work, and they have been more than patient. You have done so much for me already, I cannot ask you to give up your livelihood. You are not asking, I am offering. He turned to face her, taking both her hands in his. Rose, I know this is fast. I know you are still healing. But I cannot leave without telling you that I have feelings for you, strong feelings. And if you wanted, if you would consider it, you could come with me. Her eyes widened. Come with you. The Circle Bar is a good ranch. I spoke with the owner. They need help in the main house, someone to cook and clean. You would have your own room, your own space. You would be safe, and I would be there. Yates, I cannot just. I am not asking for anything from you, he said quickly. I am not asking for promises or commitment. I just want to make sure you are taken care of, and I want to be able to see you, to know you are all right. But if you would rather stay here, if you have other plans, I understand. Rose was quiet for a long time, looking out at the endless prairie. Finally, she said, My aunt is expecting me in California. His heart sank. Of course, I can wire her, let her know you are all right, and arrange for you to continue your journey. But I do not know her, Rose continued. I have never met her. She is my mother's sister, but they were not close. I was going to her because I had nowhere else to go, not because I wanted to. Hope flickered in Yates's chest. Then maybe you have somewhere else to go now. She turned to him, and there were tears in her eyes. You hardly know me. I hardly know you. This is crazy. Maybe. But crazy does not always mean wrong. I am afraid, she whispered. After what happened, I am afraid of everything. Afraid to trust, afraid to hope, afraid to feel. I know. And I am not asking you to stop being afraid. I am just asking you to be afraid with me instead of alone. She laughed, a small broken sound, but it was a laugh. That is the strangest proposal I have ever heard. It is not a proposal, it is an invitation. Come with me to the ranch. Give yourself time to heal, see where things go. And if you decide you want to leave, want to go to California or anywhere else, I will help you get there. No obligations, no strings. You make it sound so simple. Maybe it is simple. Maybe we are the ones making it complicated. Rose looked at him for a long moment, and he could see the war happening behind her eyes. Fear versus hope, doubt versus trust. Finally, she squeezed his hands. "All right," she said. "I will come with you." The relief that flooded through him was almost painful in its intensity. He pulled her into his arms, holding her close, and she hugged him back, her face pressed against his chest. "Thank you," he murmured into her hair. "No, thank you for saving me, for staying with me, for giving me a reason to keep going." They rode out the next morning, Rose riding behind Yates on his horse, her arms around his waist. Mrs. Henley had packed them provisions for the journey, and Martha Sullivan had given Rose a warm shawl. The whole town seemed to turn out to see them off, curious about the mysterious woman and the cowboy who had taken her under his protection. The ride to the Circle Bar Ranch took most of the day. They traveled through rolling prairie, following wagon trails and creek beds. Rose was quiet for much of the journey, but Yates could feel her gradually relaxing against his back, her grip on his waist becoming less desperate and more comfortable. They stopped midday to rest the horse and eat. They sat in the shade of a lone cottonwood tree, and Rose looked around at the vast emptiness surrounding them. "It is so big," she said, "the land, it goes on forever." "That is what I love about it," Yates said. "Out here you can breathe, you can be free." "I want to be free," Rose said softly. "I want to stop being afraid." "You will. It takes time, but you will." She looked at him. "How did you get so wise?" "I am not wise. I am just someone who has had his share of hard times and came out the other side." "Tell me about them. Your hard times." So he did. He told her about the war, about being barely 18 and fighting in battles he barely understood. He told her about watching friends die, about the nightmares that plagued him for years after. He told her about coming home to find his parents gone, victims of a fever outbreak while he was away. He told her about the years of drifting, looking for something he could not name. "And did you find it?" Rose asked. "That thing you were looking for, I think maybe I did," he said, looking at her. "4 days ago in the middle of a dusty street." She blushed, ducking her head, but he saw the small smile on her lips. They reached the Circle Bar Ranch as the sun was setting. It was a sprawling operation, with several buildings clustered around a main ranch house. Cattle dotted the surrounding fields and horses grazed in a large corral. Smoke rose from the chimney of the main house, and the smell of cooking food made Yates's stomach growl. The ranch owner, Samuel Porter, came out to greet them. He was a big man with a beard and a booming voice, but his eyes were kind. "Parker, you finally made it," he said. "And you brought company." "This is Rose Oliver," Yates said, helping her down from the horse. "I spoke with your wife about her possibly helping in the house." "Ah, yes, Margaret mentioned something about that. Come on inside, both of you. You must be exhausted." Margaret Porter was a plump, friendly woman who took one look at Rose and immediately enveloped her in a hug. "You poor dear, you look worn through. Come, let me show you to your room. There is a bath drawn if you want it, and I will bring up some supper." Rose looked back at Yates, uncertainty in her eyes. He nodded encouragingly. "Go on. You are in good hands here." He watched her disappear into the house with Margaret, then turned to Samuel. "Thank you for this. I know it is unusual." "Margaret has been asking for help for months," Samuel said with a shrug. "If this girl needs a place to stay and is willing to work, it works out for everyone. But I have to know, Parker, is there going to be trouble? She running from something?" "She is running from men who kidnapped her and plan to sell her. I do not think they will track her here, but it is possible." Samuel's expression darkened. If they show up here, they will regret it. Nobody hurts women on my land. I was hoping you would say that. Yates was given a bunk in the ranch hands' quarters, a long building with rows of narrow beds. There were about 15 other cowboys working the ranch, a mix of ages and backgrounds. They were a rough bunch but friendly enough, and after a communal dinner in the dining hall, a few of them engaged Yates in conversation. "So who is the girl?" asked a young man named Luke. "Your wife?" "No, just someone I am helping." "Must be some kind of help," another man said with a knowing grin. "Bringing her all the way out here. Leave him alone," said an older cowboy named Jack. "Man is entitled to his business." Yates was grateful for Jack's intervention. The last thing he wanted was to field questions about his relationship with Rose, especially when he did not have answers himself. That night, lying in his bunk, Yates stared at the ceiling and thought about her. Was she settling in all right? Was she comfortable? Was she scared? He wanted to go check on her but knew that would be inappropriate. She was in the main house, probably in a soft bed for the first time in who knew how long. She needed rest and peace. But sleep was a long time coming for him, his mind too full of her face, her voice, the way she felt in his arms. The next few weeks fell into a rhythm. Yates worked from dawn to dusk, helping to repair fences, move cattle, and break in new horses. It was hard physical labor, but he welcomed it. The exhaustion at the end of each day kept the thoughts and worries at bay. He saw Rose mostly at mealtimes. She worked in the main house, helping Margaret with cooking, cleaning, and mending. Margaret reported that Rose was a hard worker, quiet but competent. The older woman seemed to have taken Rose under her wing, treating her like a daughter. Whenever Yates and Rose crossed paths, there was an unspoken connection between them. A smile, a glance, a brief touch of hands as they passed. It was not much, but it was enough to keep the warmth alive in his chest. About 3 weeks into their time at the ranch, there was a dance in the barn. It was someone's birthday. Yates forgot whose, but it became an excuse for music and celebration. Someone brought out a fiddle, another man had a harmonica, and the barn was transformed with lanterns and decorations. Yates found Rose standing at the edge of the festivities, watching the dancers with a wistful expression. He approached and offered his hand. "Would you like to dance?" She looked at his hand, then at his face. "I do not know if I remember how. Then we will figure it out together." She placed her hand in his and he led her onto the makeshift dance floor. The music was lively, but he kept their movements simple, just swaying and turning to the rhythm. She was stiff at first, but as the song continued, she began to relax. "See, you remember," Yates said. "Or maybe you are just a good teacher." They danced through several songs, and with each one, Rose seemed to come more alive. Color bloomed in her cheeks, and her eyes sparkled in the lantern light. Other couples danced around them, but Yates only had eyes for her. During a slower song, he pulled her closer and she came willingly, resting her head against his shoulder. They swayed together, barely moving, just existing in the moment. "I am glad I came with you," Rose said softly. "I was not sure at first, but this place, these people, it feels safe." "I am glad too. I cannot imagine being here without you." She lifted her head to look at him. "Yates, I need to tell you something." "What is it?" "I am not broken anymore, or at least not as broken as I was. Being here, working, feeling useful, it has helped. But more than that, being near you has helped. You make me feel safe in a way I did not think I would ever feel again." His heart was pounding. "Rose, I know we said no obligations, no strings, but I do not want that anymore. I want strings. I want obligations. I want us to be real." "It is already real," Yates said, his voice rough with emotion. "It has been real from the moment I pulled you off that street." "Then say it. Tell me what this is." "I love you," he said, the words coming easily because they were true. I know it is fast and maybe crazy, but I love you, Rose Oliver. I think I have loved you from the very beginning. Tears shone in her eyes, but she was smiling. I love you too. I did not think I was capable of feeling this way, not after everything. But you thawed something in me that I thought was frozen forever. He kissed her then, in the middle of the dance floor with everyone watching. It was a gentle kiss, tender and full of promise. When they broke apart, there was applause and cheering from the other ranch hands, but Yates barely heard it. All he could see was Rose, glowing with happiness, looking at him like he had hung the moon. The next morning, Yates approached Samuel Porter. I need to talk to you about something. Let me guess, it is about the girl, Samuel said with a knowing smile. I want to marry her. With your permission, I would like to stay on here permanently, make this my home, our home. You have not even been here a month, I know. But I also know that I am not going to find anything better than this. Good work, good people, and the woman I love. What more could I ask for? Samuel considered this. You are a good worker, Parker, and Margaret is fond of Rose. If you two want to settle here, build a life, I would be happy to have you. There is a small cabin about a mile from here, one of the old line shacks. It needs some work, but it is sound. You could have that as your place. Thank you, sir. That is more than generous. Just make sure you actually ask her to marry you before you start making plans. Yates laughed. I will do that today. He found Rose in the kitchen, kneading bread dough. Her sleeves were rolled up and there was flour on her nose. She looked domestic and beautiful, and the sight made his chest ache with love. Can you take a break? He asked. She looked up, surprised. I suppose. What is this about? Come with me. He led her outside, away from the house and toward a small rise that overlooked the ranch. The sun was bright, and the prairie stretched out in all directions, golden and endless. Rose Oliver, Yates began, taking her hands in his. I do not have much to offer you. I am just a cowboy with a little bit of money saved and a lot of hope for the future. But I love you with everything I have, and I want to spend the rest of my life making you happy. Will you marry me? She was crying again, but these were happy tears. Yes, yes, of course I will marry you. He picked her up and spun her around, both of them laughing. When he set her down, he kissed her properly, pouring all his love and devotion into it. She kissed him back just as fiercely, her arms wrapped around his neck. I cannot believe this is happening, she said when they broke apart. A month ago I was ready to give up on everything. And now you have a future. We have a future. They were married 2 weeks later in the ranch's small chapel, with all the ranch hands and the Porter family in attendance. Rose wore a simple white dress that Margaret had helped her make, and Yates wore his best clothes, freshly cleaned and pressed. The ceremony was short but heartfelt, and when the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Yates felt like the luckiest man alive. The cabin Samuel had offered them became their home. It was small, just 2 rooms and a loft, but it was theirs. They spent their first weeks of marriage fixing it up, patching holes, adding curtains, making it cozy. Rose planted a garden and Yates built her a chicken coop. It was simple, humble living, but it was filled with love. Their life settled into a comfortable routine. Yates worked the ranch and Rose helped Margaret while also tending their home. In the evenings, they would sit on the porch of their cabin and watch the sun set, talking about their days, making plans for the future. You ever think about those men? Rose asked one evening several months after their wedding. The ones who took me, sometimes, Yates admitted. I wish we could have caught them, brought them to justice. I used to wish that too, but now I think maybe the best revenge is this, being happy, living a good life. They wanted to destroy me, but instead I found you. I found home. You are wise beyond your years, Mrs. Parker. She smiled at the name. Mrs. Parker, I still love hearing that. and I love saying it. As winter approached, Rose told him she was pregnant. They were sitting by the fire in their cabin when she shared the news, her hand resting on her still flat stomach. "A baby," Yates said, his voice filled with wonder. "We are going to have a baby in the spring, Margaret thinks." He pulled her into his arms, overwhelmed with emotion. "This is the best news, the very best. You are happy, happy. Rose, I am beyond happy, I am. I do not even have words." Their son was born in April, a healthy boy with dark hair and his mother's hazel eyes. They named him James after Yates's father. Holding his son for the first time, Yates was struck by the weight of responsibility and love. This tiny person, so fragile and perfect, was depending on him. "He is beautiful," Rose said from the bed, exhausted but radiant. "He is perfect. You are perfect. I cannot believe this is my life." Rose smiled. "Believe it. This is real. This is ours." As James grew, Yates watched his wife blossom into motherhood. The frightened, frozen woman he had found in the street was gone completely, replaced by someone strong and confident and full of joy. She sang while she worked, laughed often, and loved fiercely. The warmth he had given her when she needed it most had grown and multiplied, filling their home and their lives. When James was 2, they had another child, a daughter they named Elizabeth. And then, 3 years later, another son, Thomas. Their little cabin became crowded but happy, filled with the sounds of children playing, Rose singing, and Yates telling stories by the fire. The years passed quickly. Yates worked his way up to foreman at the Circle Bar, respected and trusted by Samuel and the other hands. Rose became known throughout the county for her kindness, always ready to help a neighbor in need. Their children grew strong and healthy, learning to ride and work and laugh. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Yates and Rose rode back to Valentine. They left the children with Margaret and made the journey together, just the two of them. They walked the streets of the town where they had first met, remembering that day. "Do you ever regret it?" Yates asked as they stood in the very spot where he had pulled her from the street. "Coming with me instead of going to California." Rose looked at him like he was crazy. "Regret it? Yates, you saved my life. Not just that day on the street, but every day after. You gave me hope when I had none. You loved me when I did not think I was capable of being loved. How could I possibly regret that? I just want to make sure you are happy." "I am more than happy. I am complete. You and the children, the ranch, our life together, it is everything I never knew I wanted." He kissed her there in the street, not caring who saw. After all these years, she could still make his heart race. "I love you, Rose Parker. And I love you, Yates Parker, always and forever." They spent the night at the same boarding house where he had cared for her all those years ago. Mrs. Henley was still running it, older now but just as kind. She was delighted to see them, to hear about their life and family. "I knew you two were special," she said. "From the moment I saw how Mr. Parker cared for you, Miss Rose, I knew. That kind of devotion does not come along often." The next morning, they rode back to the ranch, to their home and their children. As they crested the hill that overlooked their cabin, Yates saw smoke rising from the chimney and heard the distant sound of his children playing. It was a sight that never got old. "Welcome home," Rose said, smiling at him. "Home," Yates repeated, savoring the word. For so many years he had drifted, never finding a place where he belonged. But here, with Rose and their family, he had finally found it. He had found home. Years continued to pass, marked by the changing seasons and the growth of their children. James grew tall and strong, taking after his father with a natural skill for working with horses. Elizabeth was gentle and thoughtful, always with a book in her hand when she was not helping her mother. Thomas was the wild one, full of energy and mischief, keeping them all on their toes. When Samuel Porter passed away, he left the Circle Bar Ranch to Yates, recognizing him as the son he never had. It was a responsibility Yates took seriously, working hard to honor Samuel's legacy while also making the ranch his own. Rose helped him manage the accounts and the household staff, proving to be just as capable at running a ranch as she was at everything else. Their children grew and eventually started families of their own. James married a sweet girl from the neighboring ranch and took over the day-to-day operations of the Circle Bar. Elizabeth fell in love with the town doctor and moved to Valentine, where she raised her own family. Thomas, ever the adventurer, headed west to Montana, but came back every summer for visits that lasted weeks. As Yates and Rose grew older, they spent more time on the porch of their cabin, now expanded and improved over the years, but still the same home they had built together. They would sit in their rocking chairs, holding hands, and watch their grandchildren play in the yard. "You remember the first night I stayed with you?" Yates asked one evening, "when you could not speak or move and I just talked to you for hours." "I remember," Rose said. "I could hear you, even though I could not respond. Your voice was like a lifeline pulling me back from wherever I had gone. I told you things I had never told anyone, secrets and fears and dreams. I know, and when I finally came back to myself, it felt like I already knew you. Like we had been friends forever. Maybe we were friends in another life. Maybe that is why I recognized you immediately." Rose laughed, that same bright sound that had first appeared on their wedding day and had never faded. "You are getting philosophical in your old age." "Old? I am not old. I am distinguished, if you say so, my love." Their 50th wedding anniversary was a grand celebration. All three of their children came home, bringing their spouses and children. The ranch was filled with noise and laughter and love. There was a big dinner, music, dancing, everything that made life worth living. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, Yates and Rose sat on their porch one more time. The stars were brilliant overhead, undimmed by any city lights. 50 years, Yates said softly. "Half a century with you. Best 50 years of my life. Mine too, though I hope we have at least 20 more." "I will do my best to stick around that long," Rose said with a smile. "Someone has to keep you out of trouble." "I am never any trouble," says the man who once tried to break a wild Mustang when he was 60 years old. That horse needed someone to show him who was boss. That horse nearly killed you. They laughed together, comfortable in the kind of teasing that came from decades of knowing someone completely. Yates looked at his wife, still beautiful to him despite the silver in her hair and the lines on her face. Those lines were earned through years of smiling, of laughing, of living a full and happy life. "I love you, Rose. Just as much now as I did that day in the barn when we danced for the first time." "I love you too, Yates. Thank you for finding me, for saving me, for never giving up on me. I would do it all again in a heartbeat." They sat in comfortable silence, holding hands, watching the stars. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote howled, and from the barn came the soft sounds of horses settling for the night. It was peaceful, perfect, exactly what life was supposed to be. When they finally went inside, Rose paused at the door and looked back at the prairie stretching out in the darkness. "Do you think anyone else has a story like ours? A love that started from such brokenness but became something so whole?" "I hope so," Yates said. "Everyone deserves to be saved by love. Everyone deserves to find their home. Then I hope there are more people like you out there. People who see someone frozen in fear and decide to thaw them with warmth that never fades." Yates pulled her close, kissing the top of her head. "And I hope there are more people like you. People brave enough to trust again, to hope again, to love again even after everything they have been through." They went inside their cabin, their home, the place where they had built a life from nothing but love and determination. The fire in the hearth was burning low, casting dancing shadows on the walls. Yates added another log, and the flames leaped up, bright and warm. "That fire," Rose said, watching the flames. "It reminds me of you, bright and warm and steady, never going out." "And you are the heart of this home," Yates replied, "the center that holds everything together." That night, they lay in bed talking about everything and nothing, the way they had for 50 years. They talked about their children, their grandchildren, their memories, their hopes. They talked until Rose's breathing deepened and she fell asleep, her head on Yates's shoulder. Yates stayed awake a bit longer, thinking about their life together. From that first moment in Valentine's dusty street to this quiet night in their bed, it had been an incredible journey. They had faced challenges, certainly. There had been hard winters, difficult years, moments of worry and fear. But through it all, they had each other. That had been enough. It had been more than enough. It had been everything. The next morning, they woke to the sounds of their grandchildren already playing outside. James had stayed the night with his family, and the children were helping with the morning chores. Yates and Rose dressed slowly, taking their time, and went out to join the family. "Grandpa, watch me," called one of the grandchildren, demonstrating her ability to gather eggs from the chicken coop without disturbing the hens. "Very good," Yates called back. "You are a natural." Rose moved among the family, making sure everyone had eaten, offering advice, dispensing hugs. She was in her element, surrounded by the legacy she and Yates had created. These children and grandchildren, they were proof that broken things could be mended, that frozen hearts could thaw, that love could triumph over fear. As the morning wore on, family members began to depart, heading back to their own homes and lives. There were long goodbyes, promises to visit soon, and many hugs. Soon, the ranch was quiet again, back to just Yates and Rose and the regular ranch hands. They stood together, watching the last wagon disappear down the road. "It is always bittersweet when they leave," Rose said, "but they will be back. They always come back. Because this is home. No matter where they go, this will always be home." The seasons continued their eternal cycle. Spring turned to summer, summer to fall, fall to winter, and winter back to spring again. Yates and Rose moved through these seasons together, their love as constant as the turning of the earth. When Yates was 75 years old, he took sick with a fever. Rose nursed him through it with the same devotion he had shown her all those decades ago. She sat by his bed, wiping his forehead with cool cloths, coaxing him to drink water, talking to him even when he was too delirious to respond. "You are going to be fine," she told him firmly. "I did not survive everything I survived just to lose you now. You hear me, Yates Parker? You are going to be fine," and he was. He recovered, though it took several weeks. When he was finally strong enough to sit up and take notice, he found Rose asleep in the chair beside his bed, her hand still holding his. She had barely left his side the entire time. "Rose," he said softly. She woke immediately, her eyes focusing on him. "Yates, you are awake, really awake." "I am awake, and apparently I am not allowed to die yet. Definitely not allowed, I forbid it." "Yes, madam." She climbed into the bed beside him, careful not to jostle him, and they lay together. "You scared me," she admitted. "I scared myself, but I could hear you, you know. Even when I could not respond, I could hear you telling me to fight, to stay. Your voice pulled me back, just like my voice pulled you back all those years ago. We have saved each other more times than I can count. And we will keep saving each other. That is what love does." As Yates regained his strength, they took walks together around the ranch, short at first but gradually getting longer. They visited with their children and grandchildren, who were all relieved to see him recovering. They sat on their porch and watched the world go by, grateful for every moment they had together. On what would be their final anniversary together, their 60th, Yates gave Rose a gift. It was a small wooden box he had carved himself, decorated with intricate designs of flowers and vines. "It is beautiful," Rose said, running her fingers over the carved surface. "What is it for? Open it." Inside was a letter written in Yates's careful handwriting. Rose unfolded it and began to read. "My dearest Rose," it began. "By the time you read this, I will likely be gone. I am writing this now, while I still have the strength and clarity, because there are things I need you to know. First, loving you has been the greatest privilege of my life. You were frozen in fear when I found you, and I was frozen in loneliness. We thawed each other, saved each other, completed each other. Second, I need you to know that when I am gone, I will still be with you. In the sunrise over the prairie, in the warmth of the fire, in the laughter of our grandchildren, I will be there. And third, I need you to promise me that you will keep living. Do not let grief freeze you the way fear once did. Keep laughing, keep loving, keep being the incredible woman you are. Our love does not end when I do. It lives on in you, in our children, in everyone we have touched. You thawed my heart with a warmth that will never fade, and I hope I did the same for you. All my love, forever and always, Yates." Tears streamed down Rose's face as she finished reading. "Yates, you are not going anywhere. You are going to be with me for many more years. I hope so. But just in case, I wanted you to have that. I wanted you to know." She set the letter aside and took his face in her hands. "I already know. I have always known. You are the best man I have ever met, and loving you has been the greatest joy of my life." They held each other as the sun set outside their window, painting the sky in brilliant colors. It was peaceful, perfect, a fitting end to a beautiful day. Yates passed away in his sleep 2 months later, at the age of 76. Rose woke to find him gone, his face peaceful, his hand still holding hers. She did not cry right away. Instead, she sat with him for a long time, memorizing his face, saying her private goodbyes. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything. For saving me, for loving me, for giving me a life I never dreamed possible. I will miss you every day, but I will not let grief freeze me. I promise." The funeral was attended by everyone in the county. Yates had been respected and loved, and people came from miles around to pay their respects. Rose stood strong through it all, supported by her children and grandchildren, accepting condolences with grace. After everyone had left and the house was quiet, Rose sat on their porch alone. She looked out at the prairie, at the land she and Yates had loved, and felt his presence with her. He was in the wind, in the warmth of the sun, in the beauty of the landscape. He was everywhere. She lived for another 5 years after Yates died. They were good years, filled with family and purpose. She helped James run the ranch, played with her great-grandchildren, and kept the home she and Yates had built together. She never remarried, never even considered it. She had had her great love, and that was enough. When Rose finally passed away peacefully in her sleep at the age of 81, her children found the wooden box Yates had made for her on her bedside table. Inside was his letter, worn from being read many times, and a new letter in Rose's handwriting. It was addressed to their children and grandchildren. "My dear family," it read, "if you are reading this, then I have gone to be with your father and grandfather. Do not be sad. I have lived a full and beautiful life, far beyond anything I could have hoped for. I want to tell you the story of how your grandfather saved me, not just once but every day of our lives together. I was frozen in fear, broken by trauma, ready to give up, but he saw something in me worth saving. He gave me warmth when I was cold, hope when I was hopeless, love when I thought I was unlovable. He thawed my heart, and the warmth he gave me never faded, not even now at the end. I carried it with me every day, and it sustained me through everything. I want you to know this story because I want you to understand the power of love, real love, the kind that saves and heals and endures. I want you to be people who see others frozen in fear and offer them warmth. I want you to love fiercely and completely, the way your grandfather loved me. His love changed my life, and I hope your love changes the lives of others. We are not gone, your grandfather and I. We live on in you in the values we taught you, in the legacy of love we built together. The ranch, the family, all of this exists because a cowboy saw a woman frozen in fear and decided to save her. Never forget that. Never forget the power you have to change someone's life with your kindness, your warmth, your love. With all our love from both of us, always and forever, Grandma Rose. The family gathered to read the letter together, and there was not a dry eye among them. They understood then the foundation of everything they had. It was love, pure and simple, the kind of love that overcame fear and trauma and built something beautiful from the ashes of pain. Years later, the great-grandchildren would tell the story to their own children. The story of Yates Parker, the cowboy who found a woman frozen in fear in the middle of Valentine, Nebraska. The story of how he stayed with her, talked to her, loved her back to life. The story of Rose Oliver Parker, who was saved by love and spent the rest of her life spreading that same warmth to everyone she met. The Circle Bar Ranch remained in the family, passed down through generations. The cabin where Yates and Rose had built their life together was preserved as a reminder of where it all began. Families would visit it, sitting on the porch as Yates and Rose had done, feeling the presence of that great love still lingering in the air. The story became legend, but it was more than just a tale. It was a testament to the power of human connection, the strength of love, the possibility of healing. It was proof that frozen hearts could thaw, that broken people could become whole, that warmth given freely could last forever. And somewhere, in whatever comes after this life, Yates and Rose were together again. Dancing in a barn filled with lantern light, riding across endless prairies, sitting on a porch watching the sunset. Together always, their love as strong and warm as it had been from the very beginning, a flame that would never go out. The warmth he gave her that day in Valentine never faded. It lived on in their children, their grandchildren, their great-grandchildren, spreading out like ripples in a pond, touching lives they would never know. That was the true legacy of their love. Not just what they meant to each other, but what they meant to everyone who came after. They had proven that love could save, could heal, could transform. They had shown that the warmest hearts often belong to those who have known the deepest cold. Their story ended as all stories must, but the love remained. The warmth remained. And in Valentine, Nebraska, on the Circle Bar Ranch, in the hearts of the Parker family, Yates and Rose lived on forever, their love a beacon showing others that no matter how frozen with fear you might be, there is always hope. There is always someone who might see you, save you, and love you back to life. There is always warmth waiting to thaw even the coldest heart. And once that warmth takes hold, it never fades. Never.